I'm Shahar Azani, and welcome to this episode of Eye on Israel. Israel has for many years been at the center of international media coverage, and many of us who have been fighting for Israel in this arena have been somewhat frustrated at times, too many times, with the international reporting on the Middle East and Israel. How has this international coverage changed and evolved over time? And what can we all do today to stand up for Israel in this most important battle for public opinion? With me in our Times Square studio today is a very special guest who came to us all the way from Jerusalem, Israel, Colonel Uri Dromi, Israel Air Force retired. Uri is the founder and director general of the JPC, the Jerusalem Press Club. As a side note, we at JBS had the immense pleasure of collaborating with the JPC only recently during the Israeli elections, when the JPC organized high-level panels which aired right here to discuss the results of the elections and their ramifications. I enjoyed very much being there myself against the walls of Jerusalem, and it was one of the most beneficial professional experiences I've ever had. Now back to Uri. Uri Dromi was born in Israel in 1946. He volunteered to the Israeli Air Force in 1964 and served as a navigator fighting in 4 wars. He was also Chief Education Officer of the Israeli Air Force, Editor-in-Chief of the IAF magazine, and the head of the IDF publishing house. In 1989, he retired from the Air Force with the rank of colonel. He continued flying in the reserves until 2003. Upon retiring, Uri became the North American Director of Information for the World Zionist Organization based in LA. In August of 1992, Uri returned to Israel and was appointed by late Israeli Premier Yitzhak Rabin of blessed memory as Director of the Government Press Office, the GPO. In the following 4 years, one of the most unbelievable times in Israeli history, which were the most dramatic, he was a witness to the great events that took the world by shock and awe. From the historic handshake between Rabin and Arafat at the time, to the peace accord with Jordan, the horrible assassination of Prime Minister Rabin, and the elections that ensued, with so much more. Uri lives in Jerusalem, Israel. He's married to Dr. Dalia Dromi and has 3 children. Uri, such a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you, Shahar. Thanks for having me, and please convey my warmest regards to Mark Golub, who founded this.
Absolutely.
I have a highest respect for him. Yes, I mean, I listened to your warm introduction, and it brings memories of times which probably will not return.
You know, before we touch on that, because I'm very fascinated by it, I want to ask you about just a few words about the Jerusalem Press Club. It was a wonderful collaboration with your people. What made you create the JPC?
Well, when I worked under the late Prime Minister Rabin, there were many more foreign journalists based in Jerusalem, and I had the privilege of engaging with some of the best journalists in the world, because Jerusalem was still considered a very important station in a career of any journalist. So really I met with the best and the brightest of the journalists, foreign correspondents, bureau chiefs, etc. And it occurred to me that what we're missing in Jerusalem is a hub where journalists can come and work and dine and have some free time, but also connect with colleagues, with Israelis, opinion makers and others. Took me some time, but in 10 years ago, when I was running Mishkenot Shananim, which is a very famous guest house for artists and scholars and musicians in Jerusalem, and also a cultural center. I was running Mishkenot Shananim, and I looked at the building next door, overlooking, as you said, the walls of the old city, prime location, and it was run down and of no use. So it took me some time with the help of the Jerusalem Foundation. We refurbished the place, turned it into really the hub for the journalists. We call it where journalists meet Israel.
Right.
By the way, we are not connected to the government. It's a private NGO. We don't take money from any government in Israel, so people respect our independence. And what we're doing is we're trying to offer the foreign press based in Jerusalem access to Israeli speakers, experts, opinion makers, and others, and in a variety of sources, you know, Arabs and Jews, right and left, etc. And I'm glad you had a good experience with us.
We spoke about this with your deputy, Talia Dekel-Fleissig, who was wonderful. She explained a little bit about this, and it kind of makes you wonder, Uri. It's one of those things that you ask yourself, how come this wasn't here before?
Yeah, when I started talking about a press club, people say it's never going to happen.
Right.
When I founded it, people say, well, what took you so long?
Exactly.
You have to understand, there's in every major city in the world there is a press club, and I thought that a Jerusalem press club would fit nicely into the chain of the other press clubs in the world. So much so that a year after being founded, we became the president of the European Federation of Press Clubs.
Wow.
And we're talking about Brussels, Paris, London, etc. And if you hold our card, because we are a members club, and you show our card anywhere in the world, you get all the benefits for free. And also, you know, we ran up to now 5 conferences of freedom of the press, and we ran it together with them. And it's always good that, you know, you're not just doing your own little things, but you have partners
right.
who can manifold it, who can spread the word. So much so that just before COVID hit us, I got a call from Brussels, our friend in Brussels, saying, Uri, we are running something both for Climate Day. You know, there's a World Climate Day.
Right.
And we are doing it with all the press clubs in the world. And every press club will get 15 minutes to showcase what they're doing for climate, you know. I said, okay, 15 minutes, that's easy. Israel is doing a lot of things. A week later, he calls again and says, Uri, by the way, Israel is so good in these things, I'll give you 30 minutes. I said, wow, 30 minutes, even better. After a week, Uri, how about an hour? I said, Laurent, tell me the truth. You have trouble with the others. I mean, they don't deliver.
Right.
He says, true, yes. Cut a long story short, we got 3 hours.
Wow.
Global broadcasting by everybody, in which we showcased what 25 Israeli companies and organizations are doing to promote the UN. It's called Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
You know, zero hunger, fresh water, this. I found out that 8 of those goals, Israel is doing a lot. So we put people who do protein substitutes, agriculture, agrotech, renewable energy, etc.
Right.
These are the things that the news media isn't often showing about Israel.
And you're uniquely positioned to provide that information with the fact that of who you are, also even not being a governmental organization.
True. And by the way, also about the cultural accomplishments of Israel. For example, I started the first International Writers Festival, where all the writers of the world, including Nobel Prize laureates, coming to Israel in a homage or salute to the Israeli writers. Same with film critics. We started to bring in the leading film critics of the world to cover the Jerusalem Film Festival. And these are the people who cover Cannes, Venice,
Right.
Toronto, Tribeca, Berlin. So we put Jerusalem at the same league. And people can, we had the chief film critic of the BBC. A snob, British snob, walks with his scarf, mustache, looks down at us, natives.
Right.
I said, I'm going to crack this guy. By the end of the 10 days that he was there, I said, John, would you say something on for television? He said, by all means. And he said, Israeli films made me passionate about Israel.
Wow.
Now that's the chief film critic of the BBC. And the guy from The Guardian, when The Guardian ran a survey among 100 film critics all around the world, which is the best cinema house in the world, he picked the Jerusalem Cinematheque, where I brought him to see
Right.
the film festival. So people may go to The Guardian, which is not necessarily a champion of Israel,
Right,
and
we
in
well
front
know.
page you see something about Gaza, and in the op-ed pages you see another Israel bashing. But then you go to culture. And then millions of
That's diplomacy.
That's
That's diplomacy. That's what it's all
that's
about.
soft action.
Yes.
That's saying, look,
Right.
I'm not trying, or I can't change the fact that people are focused on conflict.
Right?
But there's more to Israel
There is
than
more
meets
to
the
Israel.
eye.
Very true.
So but don't be so edgy about
Right.
look at the other things we're doing.
Right.
Now, I'm not naive. You can't change, especially in television, when they want to frame everything in a way that Israel can immediately
Right.
tell who's a
Good guy, bad guy, simplicities, right.
good guy.
Right.
But what we're trying to achieve is to have them have a more nuanced
Taste of
attitude,
Israel. Right.
and they should take in consideration the geostrategic environment we live in,
Right.
the history, the context.
You're mentioning history, and I have to ask you this. You were, in your position at the GPO, in one of the most tumultuous times in Israeli history, a period that will be remembered for posterity as one with great pendulum swings from here to there. I have to ask you on a personal level, how did that feel?
First of all, I felt privileged to work under Yitzhak Rabin of blessed memory. You walked into his office and you looked into the eyes of a statesman. A statesman looks and thinks about what's good for my country and how can I do it. And a politician, on the contrary, thinks about what's good for me in the next elections. I don't want to make a contemporary analogies, okay? Rabin, who fought the Arabs all his life and fought the Palestinians and didn't trust them, he still took on this bold action of making peace or trying to make peace with the Palestinians. Now, the fact that it didn't work, I know because I was there. I saw Arafat bluffing. I saw Arafat turning a blind eye. The same Arafat who signed the peace accord with us turned a blind eye to terrorism. And I had to explain to the journalists what's going on there. It was very difficult. And Rabin himself was furious at times. I remember him sitting with Arafat at the Gaza
Crossing, the Arabs crossing?
crossroad or something. He banged on the head. If you don't arrest this and that, I'm pulling out of the whole thing. And Arafat feared him and complied, but only for a while. And again, when Peres took over, so Arafat again, I'm not blaming only Arafat for everything. I mean, we Israelis are not angels. We're not angels. But still, this was very difficult. But again, Rabin said we need to come to terms with the Palestinians because, and he said it in 1993,
Right.
the Iranian threat is looming over the horizon. He said it many, many years ago. So he realized that for the long run, for the best interests of Israel, you need to try to make peace with the Palestinians. By the way, he was not wrong, because even today, when we have the Abraham Accords and all this, and people tend to believe or delude themselves that we can forget about the Palestinians. We can't. They are there, and they will not go away.
I want to ask you on a personal note, really, just because it's very interesting. We all Israelis remember where they were on that moment, that terrible moment on November 4th, 1995. Where were you?
I was at the Jerusalem Cinematheque. I decided not to go to the rally because I was a civil servant, and I thought I shouldn't go to this kind of a rally. And then the beeper and the telephone start ringing. And from that moment, I remember very little. I tell you why, because I was so busy preparing the media coverage of the funeral, because you remember how many heads of states, foreign leaders came, including Mubarak, King Hussein, of course, everybody. So I was working like crazy, and I don't remember anything from that. Just working, and then I stood there at Mount Herzl when they brought in the coffin. And only then it dawned on me that in that coffin, there lies my fallen hero, Yitzhak Rabin, and I started, probably like everybody else, crying like a baby. And suddenly, the man next to me, I didn't know who he was, grabs my hand and holds it, and I still can feel the warm touch, and I look, and this is the head of the personal guard of King Hussein, with whom I got friendly when we worked together on the peace with Jordan in the Arava.
Yeah, we all remember the famous picture, the cigarette lighting by King Hussein lighting.
I was there when my photographer, Yaakov Sar, took the picture. Clinton wouldn't let them smoke. So they come out of the Oval Office and say, light me a cigarette. But you can tell the chemistry between the two of them.
That picture tells such a great story, Uri.
I can tell you another anecdote. I took the journalist to Amman, to the palace, because King Hussein and Rabin were meeting to discuss the final outstanding issue, and that was some land in the Arava, in the southern border between Israel and Jordan. Some Israeli settlements, let's call them that way, grabbed Jordanian land. Just moved to the east, and there were orchards and vineyards and what have you. What's going to happen with this? And all the journalists, they knew this is a big issue, because Hussein will not settle for anything less than what Anwar Sadat got. So they were very anxious about this. So I'm there, and there's dinner, and then Rabin and Hussein retire to one-on-one meeting to discuss this issue. So Rabin says to me, wait here with the journalists, because it will take 30 minutes or so, and be ready when we come out for the press conference. Okay, 30 minutes, an hour, nothing. And you can't knock on the door and say, are you finished or what? The journalists, they spread out, and they each takes a sofa and start snoring. And I'm there worried. They come 4 a.m, suddenly the doors open, and there is King Hussein and Rabin and myself. Rabin gets red in the face and says, where are they? I said, Your Majesty, sir, give me 5 minutes. Would you mind going back? I'll bring it. I said, Hussein said, yes. We'll have some more coffee. I rush, I bring in everybody. They stand there, they come out. Rabin says, "Your Majesty, may I speak first?" He says, "By all means." So Rabin says, when His Majesty and I closed the door behind us, we said, we're not going to go out of this room without a treaty. And the rest is details. Now, when you hear that, you understand what leadership is about.
Right.
It's so still everybody was anxious to know, what about this land? So Rabin goes on and says, of course there's the outstanding question of this land. But I said to His Majesty, this is your land, but would you lease it to me? And His Majesty says, by all means. Now here's again a win-win.
A win-win.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Uri, you're talking about, all of these engagements and high level and being at the focus of the media. I want to ask you on that media issue, what has changed in that media landscape when it comes to Israel from those days of the Oslo Accords to today? Jerusalem is still a significant capital in this regard.
Two things happen. One, there's less journalists in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. So because media outlets cut their overseas operations.
Okay.
But at the same time,
because of the digital age?
Yes, and also it's expensive, which I think is a big mistake, but I can't fight it, because readers and consumers of news everywhere, they don't get the kind of analysis and perspective and insight of a foreign correspondent who've simply, it now all moved to the news agencies. So if you look at the paper, where does the story come from? It comes from AP or Reuters or Bloomberg and the rest of them. So that's one thing. The second thing is, of course, social media. And social media affects traditional media because journalists all the time look at what's happening in social media, and something which is worrisome, they look at what people like. They have monitors, say which story gets most of the likings, etc. So it diverts the media to some extent to not from what's important to what's popular.
Right.
And that's the problem. And here there's a lot of anti-Israeli sentiment and propaganda goes, and some of it anti-Semitic, clearly going on in social media. And traditional journalists are looking at it. I'm not saying they're buying all this stuff, but definitely it has a lot. So what we do at the Jerusalem Press Club, apart from engaging with the traditional journalists, and by the way, we reach out, and you mentioned Talia, with whom you worked, right. And Talia will succeed me shortly, because I believe every organization should rejuvenate itself, right, or revitalize itself. And she will be much better than I am.
She's wonderful.
She's wonderful, and you had the chance to look. But the idea is to reach out to journalists who are not based in Israel, but are interested in Israel and the Middle East. For example, she initiated something innovative, and that is a virtual tour of our border with Syria and our border with Lebanon. We had thousands of drone videos and pictures. Wow. And you can sit in your office in Beirut or London or Tokyo and participate in a tour with a guide, Miri Eisen. I'm sure you know her.
Right.
She is one of the best experts on these strategic things. And so we reach out to people who are not based in Jerusalem, right, but write about it or are interested, so we get to broaden our outreach.
That's incredible. And would you say that the battle became harder over time? having now the fact that we have the Jerusalem Press Club engaging, what has changed in the attitude? Were journalists less negative back when you were heading the operations, or the same kind of attitude?
It's individual. You can't generalize on this. I mean, some people are anti, some people
It all depends on the person.
On the person. But I would say many of them reflect the policies of their governments. I mean, not directly, but, in the back of their mind.
Right.
I'm not talking about the British ones who, they are, I'm not saying against Israel, but they
have a very critical approach.
Less friendly than others, okay? So if you come to Israel with the mindset of Israel is wrong, or Israel is the bad guy in the equation, then there's so much you can do. But the majority of journalists are professional ones. They're coming with open minds, and here you can have an impact.
Right.
You talk to them, you build a trust, and I believe we have the trust of the journalists. They know we are non-partisan, we are not
Where
connected.
You meet Israel.
Exactly.
I just want to say, just because we're running short of time, I want, for the sake of our viewers, to gain something from your vast and unbelievable experience. For anybody out there who wishes to stand up for Israel in the media or do something for Israel in the media, what would you recommend? What can people do to influence media coverage?
I say engage with the media outlets. I mean, write to them, call them, call in when there is a talk show. Be active. I mean, it's end of the day. Didi Myers, who was the spokesperson or the press secretary of Bill Clinton, once told me how they measure what the public wants. I mean, they weigh. I mean, kilograms. The sacks of letters that arrive, 4 or something. I mean, okay, so now we know. If you write, if you call, if you say something, if you write to the editor, if you write an op-ed, I write an op-ed in the Miami Herald. Right. Why? Because I think that's my way of influencing. So there's a lot of ways. The bottom line, be engaged with the media.
Be active. Uri,
be active.
It was amazing to have you here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy and you're traveling a lot. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
A touch of the JPC in Jerusalem.
Thank you so much, Shahar.
Then thank you so much again, Uri, for your service for the State of Israel. We have learned so much from you today. I'm sure our viewers took a lot from you, especially be active. And to you, our viewers, I'd like to say thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time as we cast an eye on Israel. Continue to be active.